We'll get started here. Can you hear me all right, Dave? All right. Well, I am recording this meeting, so then we'll post the video of it afterwards on the Summers Beach State Park Planning Project if anybody has to dip out early. But I'll get started here tonight. My name is Dylan Tabish. I'm the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks Regional Communication and Education Program Manager here in Kalispell. Dave, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Dave Landstrom. I'm the Regional Recreation Manager of the Kalispell office.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave. And Randy, I know Randy's traveling right now, so maybe I won't make her pull over and say hi, but Randy's also with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and is helping greatly with this project. And I don't see any other staff on, but I'll keep an eye. Dave, if I miss somebody, please let me know and I'll make sure to flag them. But thank you for joining us tonight. This virtual information meeting is intended to help all of you learn about our master site planning process that is now officially underway for the new Summers Beach State Park. So really an exciting start to this process. And that's kind of the key. This is just the beginning. So we're going to explain tonight how we're going to launch this project, get things kicked off, and then how you all can stay engaged throughout. Because that's really going to be critical to the success of this Summers Beach State Park planning process is engagement with the public. So thanks for those who are logging in tonight or who are watching this meeting to learn a little bit about our new state park on the North Shore of Flathead Lake. So like I said, this is being recorded. So I'm going to put this video on that Summers Beach State Park webpage on our FWP website. So if you have to go back and review anything or something you missed or somebody you think might want to learn about this project and you don't want to have to go through all the details, you can just send them to this video and hopefully that will be kind of a good baseline of information for them. We're going to run through kind of a history of the project, history of the property, what our plan is, where we're moving forward, and then at the end we're going to stop for questions. And obviously that's really a big reason why we're here and hosting this meeting is so that all of you, if you have any questions or things you're wondering about or not sure how this is going to work, we want to answer all those questions. So we'll make sure at the end to give everybody a chance to ask anything you might wonder about. And I'll go through how to go through the question and answer stuff at the end. But just to start with, if you have something you don't want to have to write it down at home, you can type questions into the Q&A there on the bottom. So you'll see at the bottom of your Zoom screen Q&A. So feel free to type something in there and either during the presentation, if there's a right time to pause and answer it, we'll address it that way. Otherwise, at the very end, we'll make sure to go through each of those one by one and answer any questions. So feel free as we're going through this to just type something in that Q&A and we'll get to it. Or at the end, I'll also have you, if you want to just ask your question from your computer, you can raise your hand and I'll unmute you and you can go ahead and ask your question. Yeah, so this kind of, you can see on this slide what we're doing tonight and what the goal is. And yeah, I'm trying to think if I missed any logistics, Dave. Otherwise, I'll hand it off to you to get this thing rolling.
Yeah, no, I'll jump. We'll give folks another shot at the end on information on how to review this and also all of the information we're providing tonight and how most importantly, how to participate. And so we do have a few slides here for you that are really intended to be an overview of this master site planning process for Summers Beach. And it's a brief history, and then we'll jump into how we have sort of mapped out a planning process to get to down the road with a master site plan. Briefly, I think most folks are aware of the fact that Summers Beach State Park is located on the north shore of Flathead Lake, and it's kind of bookended by the town site of Summers to the west and the Flathead Lake waterfowl production area to the east, which is a federal refuge managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. More specifically, Summers Beach State Park is outlined here in green. Everything within that green boundary is a part of the state park. Obviously, there are a couple of inholdings there. Sort of west central is a parcel, and then that horse shoe-shaped piece on the south end of the park are both owned by Burlington Northern Santa Fe. And so those are not park property. The FWP acquired Summers Beach in actually just in 2021, closed in October. Price tag was $2.676 million, and the acquisition of property marked an achievement many years in the making, thanks to community collaboration and support. It really was a lengthy effort to bring this into public ownership, and I think, as many of us know, it's especially important since the Flathead Lake is enormous, 185 miles of shoreline, and really very little public access for a water body that size, with 20 public access points in total. And so access is precious. Summers Beach is, of course, Montana's newest state park. The acquisition represents a really important collaboration with the Flathead Land Trust, the Montana State Parks Foundation, and of course the Slider family, who were the previous owners. And the purchase was accomplished in part by using LWCF grant funding. As mentioned earlier, it's park sits adjacent to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service waterfowl production area on Flathead Lake. And the two BNSF in-holdings within the park that are not available for public use. And these in-holdings are designated as a Superfund site. And extensive remediation has been conducted by BNSF to contain underground contaminants. And so it's clearly important that we not disturb the remediation or any of those contaminants. And so that'll be a key feature of any future development at the site. What's happened to date? So in the meantime, as this acquisition has occurred and we've envisioned a long-term planning process, we have been doing some work in the interim measure, specifically, and some of you will have participated in these early efforts to gain input on interim developments, which we've actually initiated. And those were designed to simply meet basic and fundamental public needs to be able to use the site in the interim during the period where we are preparing for a long-term vision on the plan. And so we will begin very shortly, within the next few weeks, construction of an access road and a parking lot, so that folks aren't parking out on the county road, hopefully. And we've already done boundary marking on both the east and the west boundaries. And ultimately, once we have a parking lot in place, then we'll provide some portable toilets and other amenities, basic amenities like knit bags and probably some waste receptacles and temporary trails to get people from a parking area into the park. The other thing that is ongoing, and you may have, or if you've been to the site or passed it in the last few weeks, you'll see that a really significant erosion control project is underway. In fact, it's a significant portion of it is done already. And this is a project that was long in planning. In fact, it's been planned prior to FWP owning the property. And it's referred to as a dynamic equilibrium beach. We won't spend a lot of time on that tonight, but know that that's ongoing and that it's intended to address the severe erosion that's been occurring there for a number of years, losing anywhere from 6 to 12 feet of shoreline and riparian vegetation annually. This project is intended to stem that loss and to actually begin a restoration of wetlands in the areas where there are wetland plant communities. So that work is going, and if we're not getting a lot of cooperation from the weather right now, but that could potentially be done by the end of the month. So what is our planning process? As we've said, we've got some, an interim development plan in the works and in the process, but we want to have a long-term vision and plan for the park and how it's going to look and function in the future. And to that end, FWP very much values input and feedback from the public, and we're gonna provide a number of opportunities to gather that. So tonight we are kicking off this planning process and envision 3 rounds of public participation. And the one that you're going to hear the most about tonight is our initial round of public input, and that is a scoping survey. Many folks have already heard about it. We've put that out through news releases and through our partners. I've also shared that press release. And we have a survey that is live now. I think it will be through April 15, if I'm correct, Dylan. And Dylan's going to provide a whole bunch more information about how you can get on and take this survey. We're very hopeful of getting a lot of folks to engage in the survey and share some initial thoughts with us. So yeah, that's beginning now. And really what it's going to do is gather some baseline information to help us initiate the next steps of planning. Montana State Parks and Fish, Wildlife and Parks really kind of thinks about state parks and classifies them under a policy that we have that's called the State Park Classification Policy. And it's a way for us to categorize parks and help people understand what to expect when they visit a park. Summers Beach is obviously suitable for a variety of potential recreation and or interp and educational opportunities. And it goes without saying that conservation efforts to protect fish and wildlife and their habitats will be embedded in any future development plan that comes out of this process. Across Montana State Park System, FWP organizes its parks by really two things, a service level designation and experience categories. And I'll explain that a little better here in the next slides. Very simplistically put, we categorize our state parks across the state into service level designations, and they sit on a spectrum of rustic to enhanced. And rustic parks typically are defined as parks that attract visitors who are expecting self-directed experience with limited development and amenities. And that also probably means you're less likely to interact with staff on site, with department staff, and it's much more of a self-guided experience. I think that the closest relatable park in this corner of the state that you might think of in the rustic category is Wild Horse Island, where we have very limited amenities, and you're not likely to have a staff interaction while you're out there. The next level is a core park, a core state park, and that's a big part of the Region 1 operation, the Northwest Montana State Parks. And those are defined as parks that have moderate level of amenity and service levels. And if you're familiar with Lake Mary Ronan, Whitefish Lake State Park, those are really good examples of core parks in the state park system. And they do provide some amenities typically there. It's the case of boating amenities, picnicking amenities, camping amenities, and then a light staff presence that you expect to bump into park staff when you're visiting that park. Excuse me. The final category, the final end of the spectrum is enhanced. And those are, those are the parks in our system that offer a higher level of amenity, and they typically offer many or several options for enhanced visitor experience. And a great example of that would be Lone Pine State Park. We've got a visitor center there. We offer quite a variety of programming, educational programs, ranger-led hikes and talks, and that's a great example of an enhanced park. Another one would be the Wayfarers unit of Flathead Lake State Park, where you see a ranger station and some higher level program. So we marry that service level up to experience categories. And again, this is sort of nice to view this as a spectrum of experience categories, or settings is another way to think of it. And we start on the end of the spectrum of a natural park, which is really intended to be utilized primarily for its aesthetic and natural qualities. Visitors may tend to find more solitude in a park like that. And again, Wild Horse Island is a great example of a state park unit that is on the natural end of the spectrum. Heritage parks really invite the reflection on past and tell the stories of Montana's culture and histories, in the very places they occurred. And Montana State Park System has got a number of really significant heritage-based parks. If you think of Bannock State Park down in the Dillon area, Chief Plentyfield in the Billings area, or First Peoples Buffalo Jump in the Great Falls vicinity. Those are all parks whose primary function is to tell those stories of Montana's culture. And then recreation parks, lastly, and that's really what this corner of the state is known for, are parks that have a real recreation emphasis, and they encourage play and outdoor entertainment. And we do a lot of that: swimming, boating, camping. Most of the parks in our region are really have a recreational focus. But as you're probably already thinking, nearly all of these parks and nearly all of Montana state parks offer a blend of these service levels and experiences. And Summers Beach, no doubt, will do the same. What we're really going to be asking for in the survey for baseline information is just which of these experiences and service levels is really your priority. They may offer elements of all, but we're interested to know where your priorities lie in this regard. At this point, FWP is not making any firm decisions or commitments about park development beyond what is necessary to meet basic visitor needs. So we really are starting with an open slate. We're interested in understanding perspectives from the public to help develop a long-term vision for the park, and we're using this scoping survey. We're asking, and in it, we're asking general questions about your preferences, interests, and values, really as they pertain to this classification policy and what the setting what setting you would prefer to see at this park. So how can you weigh in? Well, initially, you're going to have a number of ways to weigh in through the entire process. But initially, we're really hoping to get a strong response to the survey. And that's the first place that you can really make your feelings felt about how you like this park to be and look in the future. And please do share the survey to others. Please feel free to forward it on and encourage your friends and family to also go on and take the survey. I think you'll find that it's not a huge time commitment, and it's pretty straightforward. And what happens after that survey? Again, it's going to be live till the middle of April. And at that time, then we'll sit down and we'll gather up and analyze all the information and the results from that survey. And that's what we'll use to work with our design and construction unit to start to develop some design concepts to help visualize what the park might look like. So we'll actually put some ideas on paper and some concept drawings and have those ready to share with the public for a second round of public input. And you'll hear more about that as we get closer to it. I suspect it'll be sometime in the middle of the summer, maybe mid to late summer, where we will we'll seek input in a variety of fashions on some of those concepts and give you something to sink your teeth in and look at and tell us what you think, yay or nay, or which elements of it you like or don't like. And following that second round of public input, that's what we'll use to develop and analyze design alternatives in an environmental assessment in an EA to provide for the third and final opportunity for public input. And anyone who's familiar with that EA process, we will develop an environmental assessment, and then we put that out for public review, typically for another month, for 30-day public review. And again, then we consider comment received during that process, and ultimately issue a decision notice towards the end of 2022. And our goal is to have a decision notice and a design in hand towards the end of this calendar year. And so that, in a nutshell, is what the planning process will look like. The desired outcomes, I'll fly through this list quickly. Obviously, you could read it on your own at your leisure, but obviously we want to provide a good cross-section of community values and desires as they relate to the development of Summers Beach State Park. We're going to try to identify desired park settings and levels of service. amenities and developments that are consistent with the state park classification policy that we talked about briefly a moment ago, and establish clear guidance for the protection and management of important natural, cultural, recreation, and scenic resources that are consistent with FWP's mission. Recommends educational interpretive approaches that will help to broaden the visitors' knowledge and appreciation of the area, and promote access for all visitors and provide for their safety and wellness. And lastly, it provides a basis for the decisions related to FWP's operational capital outlays and staffing levels. It'll really inform those operational elements of the long-term management of this park. So that really is the planning process in a nutshell. It's intended to be heavy on public engagement. And so, we will keep you informed as we move forward through these phases and start and have material for you to look at and review and weigh in on. And yeah, so this would be a good opportunity now, Dylan, for you to perhaps talk a little bit about how we are able to look at and view and take that survey, but also it's an opportunity to just try and address any questions you might have about this planning process, as well as the stuff that we're doing right now with the erosion control and the interim amenities.
That sounds good. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for running through that. And like you said, if we need to go back to a slide, if anybody needed to double check something or add a question about something, we can do that. But I'm going to do a quick screen share and show folks how you can find all the information about Summers Beach State Park, including that survey. So here's our main FWP homepage. So go to fwp.mt.gov, and throughout this process, it's going to be right here near the top. Outside today, you can see public planning for new Summers Beach State Park. So this is going to be the landing page to keep an eye on throughout this entire process. This is going to include updates on this process. This is where I'm going to put the video tomorrow in place of this Zoom link so the folks can watch it. And then here is the public survey. So this is where you can take the public survey. So you can see the deadline, like Dave said, is April 15th. So if you can please take it by then. It's a very simple and pretty brief survey. You can just walk through it. Pretty simple. And this is, like Dave said, going to help us just get some of that important baseline data as we get this process going. So again, the place for everything, including here's timeline, key milestones, questions, how you can get in touch with Dave. Everything about this process is going to live on this page. So bookmark it, or please visit it often if you're wanting to stay connected throughout this process. And again, it's just right here on our homepage, Summers Beach. So I'm going to stop sharing. And we've already got some questions that have come through in the Q&A. So this is perfect. If you have other questions, please start typing them in the Q&A, or you can raise your hand by clicking the raise hand button at the bottom, and that will let me know that you have a question and I can unmute you. I don't see any phone numbers calling in, so I don't have to worry about walking them through how to do it on the phone. But I'll just start reading off these questions in the Q&A. Please keep typing them in there or raise your hand, and we'll get to them one by one. So Kate asked, there's an island south of Summers Beach State Park. It's called Invitation Island. I've been told it's owned by DNRC. It's fairly proximal to the beach. And I'm wondering if you know the management plan for this island, as it seems to be, it will be potentially impacted by beachgoers. Dave, can you answer that one?
Yeah, Kate, it's not owned by Fish, Wildlife and Parks. And so, and I'm not clear on what the ownership of it is, but it's not, there's no planning for that island because it's outside the scope of our authority to have any management authority on that island. If it is a DNRC island, or in fact a public, a private owner rather, we can certainly work with those entities in the future if issues arise.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for the question. Darcy asks, is the footpath shown in the slide for the planning process going to be the trail that leads people down to the lake, or is that part of the closed area?
Can you read the first part of that, Dylan?
Yeah, the footpath shown in the slide for the planning process. So I believe that was on slide 8 or 9, possibly. That shows the trail. And I believe that's the picture that I took when you and I were down there. I can pull up the picture.
You can pull it up. I can't think of the picture. What I will say is that in the interim development plan, our intent is to provide access from the parking lot, which is sort of it's just to the east of that northernmost Burlington northern parcel. And the road would take you in there and parking would happen. Yeah, I'll get to that. And we'll provide access, and we may actually utilize a portion of the temporary haul road that's there right now to facilitate the erosion control. And that'll get you down to the park more central on the ownership. And it takes you around Burlington Northern property so that we're not leading people onto that property. The road that you see here is actually, it's the one existing road on the state park, and that's the one that is along the western edge of the park. And it begins at the terminus of Burnell Avenue, which is a county road that goes down. For folks who are familiar with there's a green gate, and that marks the beginning of the state park property. And the planning process is going to help us understand what the role of this existing road might be. That's one of the very things we'll want to know. Certainly it'll serve some function, whether it's a walking path or administrative path or available for public use. Those are the types of things we're going to try and determine through this planning process.
Great, thanks, Dave. And yeah, just to clarify too, currently it's walk-in access only from that gate. So it's a county access road on Burnell down to that gate that Dave described. And then from there it's walk-in access only. And just something I'm trying to remind people of as often as I can to please, if you are going to go to the site now before the parking lot is developed, to really please respect private property and the proper parking that is currently there. Parking is limited right now, no doubt. And so please, if you are gonna try to access the property right now, please follow the proper parking protocols there and respect private property.
Hopefully we'll have parking available for you, by late spring, early summer.
Right.
Everything we can to get that done.
Right. Okay, well, Susan asks, curious how many participants in this webinar? Yeah, we have 20. Where are we at? We're at 20, exactly.
I see 23 down here, but maybe that includes us.
I think that includes us 3. Yeah, so 23 total, but 20 attendees, so that's great. So thank you. And I think last I heard, we've already had at least a dozen people fill out the survey. So a week in, we're doing good. And next question, Scott asks, will the poll data periodically be shared and updated on the website between now and April deadline? No, I don't think that's the plan. I mean, I'm sure afterwards, I don't know what our plan is to publish the scoping survey. I'm sure that will be part of an EA or something, but I don't think, I don't know if there's a way to show this. I guess we don't want to influence the survey by showing what's popular and what's not. So we probably won't be showing the scoping survey results in the middle of the survey.
Right. I think what you'll see those reflected in the next round of public participation, and so we're going to use those results to help us craft some alternatives of what things could look like or what they could be, and they will reflect the response we get in those comments to a degree within the scope of what we can or cannot do in the state parks programming. And so there is a limited scope of development potential. So regardless of if someone wants to see golf courses, obviously that's not something we do in our state park system, so you won't see that in a proposal. But so again, within the limits of what we do.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. Susan asks, looking at the map, and I will go to the map, which is I think right there. Looking at the map, BNSF ownership extends into the beach area. Does that mean people can't walk on the beach between the 2 legs of state ownership?
That's a wonderful question. Burlington Northern, I don't want to, we don't have representation from them here, so I'll do my best to echo what I've heard them say, but they would prefer not to have public use on top of the lake bed there that is their ownership, because they have conducted extensive remediation work there. And so they've actually placed a cap on an area, on a significant portion of that lake bed to help secure and contain contaminants that are a result of historical use of property. And those contaminants live elsewhere too. They're subsurface in a somewhat mobile plume. And those of you who are familiar with the site will know that are all kinds of yellow well casings out there, and those are utilized for monitoring that plume and the contaminants and monitoring their movement. So the short answer is BN, as I understand it, would prefer that you not use that part of the state of the lake bed.
And similar question related to BN. How will the BNSF site impact the park and toxic status?
Well, it shouldn't have a significant impact, other than that we're gonna want to work with them to have that respect for private properties Dylan mentioned earlier. And any developments that we were to do on the site, we'll do in close discussion with Montana DEQ and with EPA, because we'll have to take extra precautions to not disturb contaminants that are subsurface. And one of the nice things about this park is that from that perspective is we do have access to some municipal amenities such as water, sewer, power that will help us minimize the amount of, for example, excavation that we would need to.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. Scott asks, you indicated basic services will be offered initially. Can you repeat what basic services will be available?
Yes, basic amenities aimed at the simplest things of providing parking and sanitation and boundary marking so that people are not trespassing. So the boundary markings in place already, the access point and road. What we heard initially in this whole process from acquisition through now is that one of the problems has been, sorry, the janitor's wanting me to know if she can vacuum in here right now. And the answer is no. One of the biggest challenges there has been parking along Summers Road and Burnell Road. And so that particularly happens now, as we know, the water's out, the lake bed is accessible, and it's warm and sunny. So our priority is to get parking in place to try and alleviate that roadway parking, a gate so that we can close the site at night, because during the interim management strategy, it's a day use park. And so we'll have the ability to close the park at night. There will be basic sanitation there for a trash receptacle and dog mitt bags. We're going to ask people to pick up after the pets in this park, and so we'll provide the mutt mitts that you've probably seen elsewhere in a receptacle to place them. The last thing would include an entry station, because we will post our basic park user rules about night closures, about fires, fireworks, prohibition on those types of things. And there, as a state park, there are some fees associated, and in this case, it will be associated with a non-resident entry fee. Montana residents will, assuming that they've paid the $9 state parks fee that you have the option of paying when you register your vehicles, and in Flathead County, that's somewhere around 85 or 95% of vehicle owners have done that already. So we're just assuming that all Montanan people who arrive in a Montana vehicle or walk in the park and our Montana residents are already covered for the year. So that's it in the basic amenities. We may also We have the ability to do some signage if we need to. We had a discussion just today with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service about helping them notify the public about the nesting closure that's in place there now. The U.S. The waterfowl production area to the east of us is closed March 1 through July 15 for migratory bird nesting. And so we'll provide that type of signage in the interim if we can to assist them with that message.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Another question. Susan asks, so we can currently access the park on Burnell. I see the gate is closed. What is appropriate for foot traffic for people who can walk there?
Yeah. The best thing to be would be to have legitimate parking somewhere, at your home or in town, and walk down Burnell, and you can walk around that gate. And one of the things we plan to do as soon as the ground is thawed enough is to make it a little easier for people to get around that gate as a walk-in entrance. And so until we have a design plan in hand, that will function as a fairly rustic walk-in access. So the best case, thanks for asking that, the best case scenario is you walk in from town and walk down Burnell and not park along Burnell Avenue. It's only a 50-foot right of way. And so it can get pretty congested in there if people are parking on the side of that road and walking. So hopefully that'll suffice until we can get a parking lot in place.
All right. And Davies asks, first, the photo discussed is actually part of the fenced area. But the Shoreline Erosion project appears to be omitting the BN land. Are they not participating in this project?
They're not a part of that project. They have their remediation cap in place. And so our erosion and of course that's a riprap wall there as well. And so we are doing our dynamic beach essentially up to the riprap wall that BN has constructed on both sides.
All right. And Scott asks, are the boat ramps and docks on the table here, considering how crowded the other boat ramps are during summer and the lack of parking?
That's precisely what this first survey is going to ask you is, what amenities would you like and hope to see there? The one thing I will say about boating facilities at Summers Beach is the site is probably not going to be very well equipped for anything more than a hand launch. Where you would be able to, put a boat in the water that you can essentially carry over from your car or back up to the car. Obviously, water depths there aren't substantial, and we don't have a lot of ground to work with on the shoreline. So, I think more likely if we see boating amenities there, that the site lends itself more to a hand launch type of.
All right, and Darcy asks, will the state park be open year-round, or will it be closed during the breeding season like the WPA area?
That's a great question. And the park will be open year-round. It isn't to say that we can't have discussions about, having some management strategies in place to protect nesting birds. So, but I think at this stage in the game, we envision this as a year-round state park.
Right. Now use this opportunity along with promoting people responsibly parking properly, that obviously to respect those site closures at the Fish and Wildlife Service area. Please follow those site closures and seasonal closures are very important. And so just a PSA there that I will constantly be trying to remind folks about. Kobe asks, will Summers Beach State Park be managed as a standalone state park or another unit of Flathead Lake State Park?
That's a great question too. And we've actually had that discussion internally. You won't notice any difference one way or the other on the ground. That's more of a managerial strategy, but we currently manage all the state park units on Flathead Lake as units of, we call them Flathead Lake State Park Wayfarers Unit, West Shore Unit, Big Arm Unit, Wild Horse Sound Unit. And the reason for that is with the administrative hub for the parks on that lake is Wayfarers, where we have our site manager's office there, and we have a ranger station there. And my understanding is that The preference at this point internally is to have that be a unit of Flathead Lake State Park. But that's not a firm determination at this point. Again, it really won't have any impact one way or the other on this planning process in terms of what the park might look like down the road. We have everything from enhanced to rustic units already on that park, so this one can be anywhere within that spectrum as well.
Great. These are all great questions, so thanks everybody.
Yeah, these are wonderful questions.
Linda and Rich ask, how will urban development nearby impact park development options considered?
We could spend a lot of time on that question. That's another really good question. And, it isn't just Summers Beach that, that's a consideration for. We're constantly evaluating that at all of the sites that we manage. The survey and public input is going to be important in hearing, the attitudes and feelings of those immediately adjacent neighbors and communities. But we're sensitive to that, and so you'll see a lot of effort to inform folks of where property lines are, and that trespass and that respect for private property is really important. You'll see that in our management activities and frankly in our staff presence. I think that's one of the main advantages to having this be a state park is we have the ability to have staff on site fairly frequently and almost constantly if we need it during high use periods. And that goes a long ways towards proactively solving any of those issues that neighbors have with usership, with noise, trespass, and those types of things. But most certainly the proximity of homes and the proximity of communities will be a strong consideration in any final proposals.
All right, Scott asked to follow up on the boat ramp and dock questions. Would there be possibility of vendors to provide services such as gas pumps for boats?
Well, I believe there's actually a question in the survey about how do you feel about concessions or retail type of operations there. Nothing's ruled out at this point. But again, we'll have to work within the constraints of the site. And it's a sensitive location there. A lot of the shoreline there is pretty delicate wetland shoreline, hence the dynamic beach to help protect and conserve that. So there will be some constraints for sure as to what's feasible at that site. And again, we can't do, we're going to be careful about what goes subsurface because of the concerns for the Superfund site. So that's a further constraint as to what can go below the surface.
All right, Davies asks, how do you plan to enforce trespassers on the BN portion of the beach and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service bird closures?
Well, we're going to have to work with those partners. We just spoke with Fish and Wildlife Service about that today. And, the biggest challenge there is, as kind of already been pointed out, is it's really difficult to know where those property lines are out on the lake bed. And that's where most of the trespass occurs. So we're already in discussions with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service about how we can better sign that and notify folks. We'll be able to provide information within the park and where we have posted information and trailheads and entry points. So we'll certainly provide that information there, and then we'll work with those other entities on how best to do that. They'll have a role to play as well. BN's got a role to play in notifying the public, what they can or cannot do on the public right now, on the property right now. They're asking you not to be on it. And the Fish and Wildlife Service has acknowledged that role as well, but they've got a responsibility there to let the public know what you can and can't do and when you can do it. But we've made it really apparent that we're eager to help them with that.
Great. Susan asks, a big question about shore access because of the fluctuation of water levels is where private land ends and public land starts regarding high water elevation. What laws apply regarding this?
There aren't any specific laws to this. Lakes do not fall within the same law that regulates rivers. So, in a river, in a navigable river, the public's free to be below the normal high water mark. That does not apply to lakes. So, and as you see from this photo that's on the slide right now and elsewhere on Flathead Lake, those property lines in a lot of cases extend way out into the lake. Those are private property, and they're where that occurs. It's easy to find that on any of the on your phone apps these days, or on Montana cadastral or Flathead County cadastral pages. You can see how far many of those lots extend out into the lake. Those are private property, and granted, they're difficult to post, particularly when the water's in. But the access at Summers Beach State Park is really restricted to what is state park property.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Kate asks, won't this beach be a non-motorized use only?
Well, that's yet to be determined. That's what we're doing here in this planning process. And motorized use is certainly allowable on the lake. There's, the lake, Flathead Lake is not a non-motorized lake. That's yet to be determined. So for example, if there's a hand launch in place, I don't anticipate that would necessarily be a non-motorized launch. If you've got a 10-foot boat with a small motor that you can carry off and place in the water there, that might very well be an acceptable use there. But the planning process is going to help us determine that. One of the other things that's important is that, those laws that pertain to motorized or non-motorized use on lakes are at the discretion of the Fish and Wildlife Commission, Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks Commission, and they entertain those and make those determinations. So we wouldn't be able to regulate the surface of the lake through this planning process, but we can certainly determine what type of amenity we want to provide.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, so these are all great questions. So thank you everybody for writing these in. I don't see any other ones. So if you have a question you'd like to ask, please raise your hand and I can unmute you, or feel free to keep typing them in the Q&A box. And that's what we're here for, is to help answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, thanks for all the good questions. These have been good ones for sure. A lot of the same questions we've had as we've gone through this ourselves internally. And so it's nice to hear them reflected, and we're thinking about a lot of the very same things, it sounds like.
Well, I will pause here a couple more moments, or a minute or so, to see if there's any other questions that trickle in. Kind of do last call for questions otherwise, and let everybody get back to their dinner or their evening. Oh, there's a question from Susan. Thank you, Susan. What about the opportunity to build bicycle and walking trails around Summers Road? It could provide a greater and safer access to the park.
Boy, do I agree with that. And that's outside of the scope of this project, because most of that would occur outside of park property. But we really like that idea. We're excited about the fact that the Northwest Rail Trail terminates really close to the park. You can actually get to this park on a bicycle pretty easily. And there were talks previously in the past, and hopefully will be again in the Flathead County Trails Plan. We're trying to provide connectivity across the top of the lake there and to these sites. So Again, it's outside the scope of this project. We can't do that unilaterally, but we would be very willing partners in any future efforts to develop pedestrian bike trails to access the park.
And somebody has a good question. Would it be possible to point out the current entry gate on the map on the screen? And so that's what I'm pulling up real quick to show everybody. Essentially right now, that Burnell Avenue walk-in access point. So that you can see exactly what we're.
And I should add that, nothing's prevents you from walking down Summers Road and walking out into that hayfield as well and accessing the park that way, because that is park property as well. So
right.
It's just, if you're walking from the town of Summers or something, that's a viable option too. I think you'd have to go back to the slide.
Yeah, I was going to just show Burnell Avenue right now as the road. So here's the town of Summers right here. And so you come around this corner and I'll switch views so you can kind of see it in satellite view, but just so you can see it in very plain black and white, find the proper parking if you can. It's very limited, but please do not park on private property or in the road, obviously. And then Burnell Avenue is this county public road right down here. And it goes down through here. And then right here or somewhere in here, I can't tell if it's right here or up a little bit, there's that green gate that Dave talked about. And that's officially the boundary into Summers Beach State Park. And that's where you are allowed to walk in access only. And as Dave mentioned, we're going to be trying to improve so it's a little easier to get in and around that gate. And then from there, there's still a road. It just doesn't show up on Google Maps that walks you down here to the beach. And I'll switch layers so you can kind of see it here. And so
if you could, Dylan, if you could switch back, if you're able to easily,
yep.
The slide presentation, I'd add a little bit to that.
Yeah. Do you want this one?
The slide that had the
oh yes, here we go. Let me
and sorry, I know you probably closed out of that slideshow, but back to it. There's a couple of things I can point out to you. Yeah. So I don't know if you're able to zoom.
See if I can zoom in.
Yeah, so you can see Burnell. You can trace that with your. Maybe I'm tracing it. If you can see my cursor.
Let me see if I can zoom in a little better.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes it a little easier to see.
Well, and are you seeing my cursor on the screen?
No.
Okay. If you could trace Burnell Avenue, what right about where the green corner is up there is about where that gate is, and that's the park boundary. And what I want to reiterate that Burnell Avenue is a county road, but it's only a 50-foot right of way. If you go out on Summers Road, that's also a public road, but there's very limited ability to pull off and park, and that has been the source of a lot of conflict, is people doing just that. So what we're really encouraging people to do is, this park is just in its infancy. It's really only been a park for a handful of months. Is be patient and wait for the parking amenity to arrive. And Dylan, if you can go up into that hayfield, it's in the green field up in the northeast corner there. The southwest corner of that is where the parking will be located. And it's only a matter of a few weeks before that's going to be available. And so really, there is no parking. There absolutely is no legitimized parking there. If you want to go and visit the park now beforehand, the best bet is to simply walk or ride your bike there, and or your horse, I guess. But because there's just no parking available, and you can enter where Dylan just pointed, or if you're walking, you can walk into the park up in that green acreage up there and walk south from there. But do bear in mind that that's as you get south from that field, it's very wet, and now we're in the wet period, and there will be waterfowl nesting. So we'll be more ready for visitors as we get through this planning and have strategy in place to address those things.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Thank you for the question. Yeah, and I think we're excited to get that parking lot in place, because parking has been a very major topic that we are trying to address as best we can now that we're landowners of that site. And Susan asks or states, before parking is in place, it's important to have good foot traffic control. People in the past have parked all over the place, and it's quite dangerous. We should ask for more sheriff patrols to maintain safety until parking is ready. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Susan. It's the parking has been a problem for quite some time, and it's
well, and there's the tricky part is there's nothing illegal about parking, right? That
right.
when the sheriff's department would get engaged is if if there's a danger or an obstruction, it's legal to park in the right of way. So we can't tell people that it's illegal. We're just asking them not to do it right now if they can refrain, because it causes.
Yeah, but thank you for the good questions. I guess another PSA, while I've got a group who's interested and engaged on this process, dogs off leash have become a very serious conflict as well with neighbors. And so please, if you're going to be down there, please make sure your dog is on leash. We don't want to have any conflicts or trespassing on neighbors' property. So please respect that and keep your dog on leash.
With waterfowl nesting.
Yeah, and waterfowl nesting, obviously that can create a huge issue for that as well. So please be a responsible pet owner and keep your dog on a leash there. Great. Well, all good questions. Any other questions are out there? Raise your hand or type it into the Q&A, and please make sure to hop on and take that survey and share it with friends or folks who might be interested in participating in that and giving us their feedback. Okay, I'll do last call here for questions. And again, a reminder, all the information on the survey and the planning process is going to be posted on that Summers Beach State Park Planning Project page on our, oh, and there's a question that come in. Who do neighbors register trespass and dog complaints with? I think that would be county, so that'd be the sheriff's office, wouldn't it, Dave? Hope you're muted, Dave.
All right. Trespass is, the only ones who have the authority to deal with trespass outside of state park boundaries is the sheriff's department. But certainly, there's going to be a period of adjustment for people with dogs. Obviously, if you've been there, you see that it's, there hasn't been a leash requirement in the past. And so we're going to be going through a learning process there, but ultimately Fish, Wildlife and Parks will be, the ones who respond to concerns about dogs off leash.
On our properties, correct? Off our properties, we don't have our
folks coming from the park obviously will help.
Yeah.
Problem. But our scope is limited as an agency to the boundaries of the state park.
Right. All right. Well, I think I will wrap up our meeting here. Thanks everybody for joining tonight and asking great questions. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have further questions. Give us a call at our FWP office here in Kalispell. Stop by, send us emails. Contact information is on that Summers Beach State Park webpage. And thanks again for being engaged in this process and helping us shape the future of this state park in a positive way. So have a great night, everyone, and thanks again for joining.